You make the point that he won 2 elections as Mayor of London, which is a Labor city through and through. And then, as you said, won the biggest Tory majority since Thatcher, smashed the so-called Red Wall, 60 or so seats in the industrial north of England, which had been Labor heartland for generations. Now, isn't it significant where 95% of the Labor Party in the Parliament at Westminster were in favour of remaining, but 52% of the electorate voted to leave? Basically, those people saw Boris Johnson as the only person prepared to give them a voice and act according to their dispositions.
Yeah, and Boris Johnson could speak to working class voters in a way that the Labor Party leader at the time, Jeremy Corbyn, who was about as close to being an old commo as it's possible to get in British parliamentary democracy, couldn't. I mean, Corbyn represented, as I said in the piece I wrote in the Sydney Morning Herald, Corbyn represented everything good, old-fashioned, patriotic, traditional Labor voting people loathed. He was cosmopolitan. He was from the elitist suburbs of North London. He didn't speak their language. He was way, way, way to the left of where the Labor Party should have been. Even by British Labor standards, where often there have been quite left-wing leaders, Corbyn was at the very extreme edge of the left. He had nothing to say to traditional Labor voters who were patriots.
That's it.
These people, they had weathered the massive economic dislocation that was brought about during the Thatcher Revolution. They had stuck for one generation after generation after generation by the Labor Party, and now they were faced with a Labor leader whose politics they found repulsive, and a Tory leader who spoke directly to them and honoured the promise to take Britain out of the EU, which all of those old-style Labor people had voted for.
Yes, that's what. Just repeating that point, you see, 52% in the referendum of the public voted leave, yet in Westminster, 95% of Labor MPs were backing Remain. George, surely that identifies a gaping chasm which separates the Liberal elites from ordinary people.
Well, certainly that's evident in the United Kingdom, where, I mean, Linton Crosby, who's been a friend of mine for 40 years, said to me when I arrived in the United Kingdom, Linton is the guru behind Boris Johnson, of course, and his campaigns to become Mayor of London in particular. Linton said to me, the way to think about London is it's a city-state. It's like Venice was in the 16th century. It's got nothing to do with the hinterland. London, around what they call the M25, the orbital freeway around London, is so cut off from the rest of England and the rest of the United Kingdom that that there is a state of mind in London that does not represent the mainstream of public opinion in the UK. Now, there are only about 8 million people live in London. There are about 68 million people live in the United Kingdom. And what Boris was able to do, but Corbyn was not, is reach beyond the London elites, beyond the wealthy elites in the south of England, and connect with people in the Midlands and the north, the old industrial heartland. And he spoke to them in a way the Labor leader couldn't.